The heavy glass doors of the airport slid open, and the midnight cold hit my face. I pulled my coat tight, dragging my rolling suitcase behind me. I was exhausted after 2 grueling months in Seattle, but I could not stop smiling. I did it. I secured the $20 million investment for Apex Tech. The company Lucas and I started in a cramped basement 5 years ago was finally going to conquer the tech industry. I whipped out my phone and dialed Chloe. It rang 4 times before going straight to voicemail. "Hey babe," I said into the speaker, my voice trembling with excitement. "I just landed. I know I'm 3 days early, but I couldn't wait to see you. Headed home now. I love you." I hung up, caught a cab, and stared out the window as the city lights blurred past. All I could think about was holding Chloe in my arms, pulling out the velvet box in my pocket, and setting a wedding date. 20 minutes later, I stood outside the door of our luxury penthouse. I pressed my keycard against the electronic lock. Beep, beep. Red light. I frowned. I tried again. Red light. "That's weird," I muttered to myself. I tapped the keypad and entered the master override PIN I created when we first bought the place. The lock chimed softly and the heavy oak door unlocked. "Chloe?" I called out, stepping into the quiet foyer. "Babe, it's me." No answer. But soft laughter echoed from the main living room down the hall. I smiled, thinking she was watching a movie. I dropped my suitcase by the door and walked quietly toward the light. I stepped into the living room, ready to shout surprise. The words froze in my throat. Chloe was sitting on the leather couch. Her head was thrown back, laughing. Sitting right beside her, his arm wrapped tightly around her waist, was Lucas. As I watched in horror, Lucas leaned down and kissed her deeply on the lips. My heart slammed against my ribs so hard I couldn't breathe. The room spun. "Chloe?" My voice came out as a weak whisper. Both of their heads snapped toward me. Chloe didn't flinch. She didn't jump up or try to cover herself. She just slowly pulled away from Lucas and looked at me with cold, empty eyes. Lucas smiled, a sinister, satisfied grin. "Ethan," Lucas said, casually standing up. "You're back early." What is this?" My chest burned as I looked between them. "Lucas, what are you doing with my fiancée?" "Fiancée?" Chloe scoffed, leaning back on the couch. She crossed her legs and looked at me like I was a stranger. "Don't be dramatic, Ethan. It was over between us months ago. You were just too blind to see it." "Over?" I stammered, taking a step toward her. "Chloe, what are you talking about? I just spent 2 months working 20 hours a day in Seattle for our future." "No, Ethan. You spent 2 months playing programmer while the real adults ran the business," Lucas interrupted. He reached into his suit jacket, pulled out a thick envelope, and tossed it onto the glass coffee table between us. "Sign it." I looked at the white paper. "What is this?" "Your resignation," Lucas said coolly. "Along with the complete transfer of your shares in Apex Tech to Chloe and me." I laughed, a broken, desperate sound. "Are you insane? I built Apex. I wrote the entire core code. You can't fire me from my own company." "We already did," Lucas said, taking a step closer. His eyes were vicious. "While you were away playing hero in Seattle, Chloe and I called an emergency board meeting. We filed reports claiming you embezzled funds. With your signatures, which Chloe kindly provided for us, the board voted unanimously. You're out, Ethan. You own 0% of Apex." "You forged my signature?" I yelled, my hands shaking uncontrollably. "That's illegal. I'll take you to court. I'll destroy you." "With what money?" Chloe asked softly, standing up. She walked over to me, her expensive perfume filling my nose, the same perfume I bought her for her birthday. "Lucas froze all your personal and corporate accounts an hour ago. You have nothing, Ethan. No job, no money, and no lawyer will touch you for free." "Chloe, please," I choked out, tears finally breaking through my eyes. "How could you do this to me? I loved you. I gave you everything." She raised her left hand. The diamond engagement ring I spent my entire life savings on sparkled under the chandelier. Slowly, intentionally, she pulled the ring off her finger. "You were a stepping stone, Ethan," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "You're a brilliant coder, but you're weak. You don't have the stomach for real power. Lucas does." She let go of the ring. It dropped to the marble floor with a sharp clink and rolled right to the tip of my shoe. "Take your ring and get out of my apartment," Chloe said. "This is our apartment." I yelled. "It was," Lucas sneered, standing beside her. "Now it belongs to Apex Tech. Security is on their way up, Ethan. Walk out on your own feet, or I'll have them throw you down the stairs." I stood there, paralyzed by the sheer weight of their betrayal. My best friend. My future wife. They had planned this for months. "You won't get away with this," I whispered, my voice trembling with rage and heartbreak. "Karma is going to tear you both apart." "Karma doesn't exist in business, Ethan," Lucas replied with a smirk. "Now leave." I didn't pick up the ring. I turned around, walked out to the foyer, and grabbed my single suitcase. I walked out of the apartment and into the elevator. When I reached the street, the sky broke open into a heavy torrential rain. Cold water soaked through my coat in seconds. I stood on the sidewalk, listening to the thunder crack above the city, completely broke, utterly betrayed, and entirely alone. The buzz of a neon sign flickered outside my tiny motel room window. I sat on the edge of a stained mattress, staring at my reflection in the cracked mirror across from me. My hair was matted from the rain, my eyes bloodshot, and my suit ruined. 24 hours ago, I was a successful tech founder. Now I was a nobody. I checked my phone banking app again. A stark red message glared back at me. "Account frozen, contact customer support." "Suspicious activity," I muttered bitterly, tossing the phone onto the bed. "Lucas, you bastard." He had covered every base. He reported all my personal accounts as compromised, leaving me with $42 in cash and a single suitcase. My phone chimed with a text notification making me jump. It was an unknown number. "Meet me at the Red Diner on 4th Street in 20 minutes. Don't reply. SR. Samantha," I breathed. My loyal executive assistant. 15 minutes later, I slid into a dark vinyl booth at the back of the greasy diner. I pulled my hood low over my forehead. The bell above the door jingled, and Samantha hurried inside, clutching her leather handbag tightly against her coat. She spotted me and rushed over, sliding into the seat opposite mine. "Ethan." "Oh my God, are you all right?" she whispered loudly, her hands shaking as she reached out to touch my arm. "I've been trying to find a way to contact you without Lucas seeing." "I've been better," I said, trying to force a reassuring smile, though it felt like ash in my mouth. "Did Lucas force everyone at the office to sign non-disclosure agreements?" "Yes," Samantha said, leaning in closer. "He called an emergency all-hands meeting this morning. He told the entire engineering team that you stole company funds and fled the state. He threatened to fire anyone who even mentioned your name." "And Chloe?" I asked, the name tasting like venom. "She moved into your old office, Ethan," Samantha said softly, looking at me with pity. "She's calling herself the chief operating officer now. She spent the entire morning ordering new luxury furniture on the corporate card." I rubbed my temples, fighting off a sudden wave of nausea. I can't believe I trusted them. I spent 5 years building Apex Tech from nothing. "They aren't going to get away with it," Samantha insisted. She unzipped her purse, pulled out a small black flash drive, and pushed it across the table toward me. "Take this." I looked down at the drive. "What's this?" "I stayed late last night after everyone left," she whispered. "Lucas was careless. He moved the private financial servers, but he forgot to wipe the primary drive backups. I copied all the raw transaction logs before he locked my access. It proves that the suspicious transfers came from his account, not yours." My eyes widened as I took the drive. "Samantha, if Lucas finds out you gave me this, he'll ruin you." "Let him try," she said fiercely. "You gave me a job when no one else would, Ethan. I know who really wrote the code for Apex. Oh, and you need to know one more thing. They're throwing a massive engagement party in 3 weeks." I stiffened. "An engagement party?" "At the Vance family estate," Samantha confirmed, nodding grimly. "Chloe's father is hosting it. They're using it as a victory lap to announce their takeover of Apex Tech to the entire city's business elite. They stole my life and now they're celebrating it," I growled, clutching the flash drive tightly in my fist. "You need a lawyer, Ethan," Samantha urged. "You need someone powerful." "I don't have a dime, Sam. No top firm will look at me." I sighed, opening my laptop on the wooden table to inspect the files on the drive immediately. "I need to see what's on this drive first." I plugged the drive into my laptop. Rows of complex, custom encrypted algorithms flooded my screen alongside the transaction logs. I typed furiously, using my personal decryption hotkey to unpack the hidden files. "Excuse me," a sharp, velvety voice spoke behind me. I jumped, accidentally knocking my coffee cup against the table as I stood up too fast to turn around. My shoulder bumped right into a tall, elegant woman wearing a tailored charcoal trench coat. "Watch it," her bodyguard growled, taking a step forward. "I am so sorry," I said quickly, backing up against the booth. "I didn't see you." "It's fine, lower your arms," the woman said calmly, waving her bodyguard back. She had striking gray eyes and dark hair pulled into a severe, elegant knot. She looked completely out of place in a cheap diner. As she adjusted her coat, her eyes drifted past my shoulder and landed on my laptop screen. Her composure broke for a fraction of a second. "Is that the core architecture for the Apex automated security protocol?" she asked, her voice dropping an octave. I closed the laptop lid slightly. "Who's asking?" "Victoria Sterling," Samantha gasped softly beside me. My heart skipped a beat. Victoria Sterling was the founder and CEO of Sterling Global, the biggest tech conglomerate on the West Coast and Apex's fiercest rival. Victoria looked at me intently, her sharp eyes studying my tired face. "You're Ethan Carter, aren't you? The main architect behind Apex." I said bitterly. "Until my business partner and fiancée threw me out on the street yesterday." "I know," Victoria replied smoothly. She motioned to the booth. "May I sit?" I looked at Samantha, who gave me a subtle nod. "Go ahead," I said. Victoria sat down, crossing her legs with effortless grace. "Lucas Miller tried to pitch your software to my acquisition team 3 hours ago. He claimed he built it himself. But I know your coding style, Mr. Carter. You use a unique recursive function that no one else in the industry uses. Lucas doesn't know how to write a single line of that code," I said, my voice cold. "Clearly," Victoria smiled, though her eyes remained sharp. "He couldn't answer basic questions about the server scaling. Which brings me to why I'm standing in a greasy diner. I came here to grab a private meeting with a source, but finding you is much better." "What do you want, Miss Sterling?" I asked. "I want to ruin Lucas Miller," Victoria said directly. "And I think you want the exact same thing." Victoria leaned back against the red vinyl booth, signaling her bodyguard to step outside the diner. "I don't waste time with small talk, Ethan," she said, resting her chin on her hands. "So let's get straight to the point." "I'm listening," I replied, taking a slow breath as I gripped my lukewarm coffee mug. "Why are you so interested in my situation?" "Because Lucas Miller is an idiot who thinks he can play in the major leagues," Victoria said plainly. "He walked into my boardroom this morning, threw your stolen platform on my desk, and demanded a $50 million buy-in. He swore up and down that he single-handedly engineered the system." I let out a bitter laugh. "Lucas can barely configure an API endpoint, let alone write that core architecture." "I know," Victoria replied with a sharp smile. "I recognized your signature recursive structures instantly. I built my entire company on software architecture, Ethan. I know your work better than your former partner does. But more importantly, I know you own the underlying patents under your personal name, not Apex Tech's corporate umbrella. I registered them individually before Lucas and I formed the LLC," I said, my pulse quickening. "He bypassed board approval, but he hasn't legally broken my personal patent seal yet." "Exactly," Victoria said, leaning forward. "He is trying to sell stolen property to Sterling Global. I could sue him today, but that would only tie him up in court for years. You and I can do something much more effective." "What are you proposing?" I asked. Victoria pulled a thick leather folder from her designer briefcase and slid it across the table toward me. "A full strategic partnership," she said. "You assign the exclusive commercial licenses of your next-generation patents to a joint venture under Sterling Global. In return, I give you full access to my legal team, a 30% equity stake in the new subsidiary, and $10 million in private venture backing." I stared at the black leather folder on the laminate table. $10 million? Just like that. "There is one key condition," Victoria added smoothly, her gray eyes locking onto mine with absolute seriousness. "A personal condition." I frowned, glancing up from the documents. "What kind of condition?" "We get married," she said flatly. Samantha gasped beside me, covering her mouth with both hands. I blinked, convinced I had misheard her. "You want us to what?" I stammered. "Marriage," Victoria repeated without flinching. "Listen to me carefully, Ethan. My family's holding firm controls vast swathes of local commercial real estate, including the historic properties tied to the Vance family estate. Under the terms of my grandfather's trust, I cannot execute hostile corporate buyouts of tech-adjacent family land trusts unless I am legally married to an executive partner. It is an outdated clause, but it is entirely binding. So you need a married business partner to unlock your trust's capital," I said, realization slowly dawning on me. "And you need a shield," Victoria countered sharply. "Lucas froze your assets. Chloe humiliated you. If you walk into court alone tomorrow, their lawyers will drag you through the mud until you starve. But as my husband, you gain instant immunity, unlimited capital, and supreme executive power. It's a fake marriage," I stated, staring at her. It is a legal contract with immense mutual benefit, Victoria corrected. We sign a comprehensive prenuptial agreement. We present a united front to the public. You get your revenge and your freedom. I acquire the Vance properties and secure the best software architect on the West Coast. Do we have a deal? I looked down at my rough, calloused hands, then looked over at Samantha, who gave me an earnest, quiet nod. I remembered Chloe's cruel laugh as she dropped my ring on the cold floor. I remembered Lucas's smug smile as he threatened to have security throw me down the stairs. They thought I was weak. They thought I was a pushover who would hide in a hole and cry while they built an empire on my stolen blood and sweat. If I do this, I said, my voice dropping into a register colder and harder than I had ever known, I don't just want my company back, Victoria. I want them to lose everything. Victoria's eyes sparked with genuine approval. I wouldn't offer you this deal if I expected anything less. Then give me the pen, I said. She pulled an elegant gold pen from her coat pocket and handed it to me. I flipped to the back page of the contract. My hands didn't shake. The soft, weak programmer who let people walk all over him died in the rain outside that penthouse last night. I signed my name along the crisp white line with firm, decisive strokes. Welcome to Sterling Global, Ethan, Victoria said, taking the signed papers back and blowing softly on the wet ink. My legal team will have our marriage certificate processed by tomorrow morning. We have 3 weeks before Chloe and Lucas host their big engagement party. What happens in 3 weeks? I asked, looking up at her. Victoria stood up, buttoning her trench coat with calculated composure. She looked down at me with a cold, predatory smile. In 3 weeks, my husband, she said, we go to their party and we tear their world apart. The glass doors of the Vance family estate swung open, revealing a glittering ballroom filled with champagne flutes, silk dresses, and laughter. 3 weeks of quiet preparation had brought me to this exact threshold. I adjusted the cuffs of my custom tuxedo. Victoria stepped smoothly to my side, slipping her arm through mine. Ready to break their illusion, Ethan? She asked softly, her gray eyes sharp with expectation. More than ready, I replied, holding my head high. Let's go. We stepped inside just as a spotlight swept across the raised stage at the front of the hall. Chloe stood there in an emerald gown, clutching a microphone, her golden hair reflecting the massive crystal chandeliers above. Lucas stood beside her in a sleek navy suit, holding a glass of scotch like a king surveying his kingdom. We built Apex Tech on vision and relentless passion. Chloe's voice echoed through the speakers, dripping with fake warmth. Tonight, as Lucas and I celebrate our engagement, we also welcome a revolutionary era for our company. The future belongs to those who dare to lead. And to the real minds behind the tech, Lucas added into his microphone, puffing out his chest. We've cut away the dead weight. Apex is entirely ours now, and our acquisition phase begins tonight. The crowd erupted in polite, expensive applause. He actually believes his own lie, I muttered, taking a step toward the stage. Arrogance makes men blind, Ethan, Victoria said coolly. Make your entrance. We walked down the center aisle of the ballroom. As people turned to look at the newcomers, whispered conversations began to die down. My sleek black suit, tailored by Victoria's personal designer, stood out against the crowd. But it was the woman on my arm that caused heads to spin. Chloe was mid-laugh when her eyes landed on me. Her smile instantly vanished. She froze, the microphone shaking slightly in her manicured hand. Lucas followed her gaze, his smug expression twisting into an angry scowl. Ethan? Chloe gasped into the live microphone. The sound echoed harshly across the silent room. Lucas snatched the mic from her hand. What are you doing here, Ethan? Security. 2 large security guards in black suits immediately stepped out from the shadows of the room, blocking our path. You've got a lot of nerve showing up here, Lucas sneered into the speaker, stepping down from the stage to face us. You were fired 3 weeks ago for financial fraud. Did you really think you could crash my engagement party? I don't recall asking for your permission to walk into a public gala, Lucas, I said loudly, my voice steady and commanding. Chloe walked down the stairs, standing beside Lucas, her eyes burning with contempt. Look at you, pathetic as ever. Did you rent that suit with the last of your pocket change? Security, throw this broke loser out onto the street where he belongs. Touch him, and I will buy this estate tonight and fire both of you by morning. Victoria's voice cut through the air like a razor. The security guards paused, glancing nervously at each other. They recognized her instantly. Chloe sneered, turning her attention to Victoria. Miss Sterling? Why are you standing next to him? Don't tell me this trash convinced you to feel sorry for him. Watch your mouth, Chloe, Victoria said calmly, stepping forward so she stood shoulder to shoulder with me. You are speaking to the newly appointed Executive Vice President of Sterling Global. A collective gasp rippled through the gathered crowd of investors and journalists. Lucas blinked in sheer disbelief, his mouth hanging slightly open. Vice President? Lucas stammered, pulling the mic away from his mouth for a second before raising it back up. That's absurd. He's a disgraced former employee. He doesn't own a single line of code anymore. He owns every line of code you tried to sell me 3 weeks ago, Mr. Miller, Victoria replied smoothly. And more importantly, he is my husband. The silence in the room was deafening. Chloe's face went completely pale. She stared at me, her lips trembling as she tried to form words. Husband. Chloe whispered, her microphone picking up the shaky sound. No, that's impossible. Ethan, you married her? We signed the papers 2 weeks ago, Chloe, I said, reaching into my inner jacket pocket. And unlike you, Victoria values actual talent and loyalty. I pulled out a thick, sealed manila envelope and took 2 steps toward Lucas. He flinched, instinctively backing up, but I caught his forearm and pressed the envelope hard against his chest. What is this? Lucas demanded, his hand shaking as he took the papers. That is a formal federal court summons for intellectual property theft, corporate espionage and fraud, I said clearly, ensuring every reporter in the front row could hear every word. You're bluffing. Lucas yelled, his face turning beet red. I signed the core software filing under Apex Tech. You signed the public framework, Lucas, I said, leaning in close so only he and Chloe could hear my lower register. But 12 hours before you locked me out of the main server, I registered the core underlying algorithm under my personal name at the Federal Patent Office. The platform Apex is using right now is entirely dependent on my private patent. Lucas ripped open the envelope, his eyes wildly scanning the legal documents. His face drained of all color. Every server request your clients make right now is an active patent infringement, I continued, smiling coldly. Sterling Global's legal team filed an emergency injunction an hour ago. By midnight tonight, all of Apex Tech's operations will be shut down by federal order. Ethan, wait. Chloe cried out, taking a sudden step toward me, reaching out her hand. The coldness in her eyes was replaced by sheer terror. We can talk about this. We have history, Ethan. You can't just ruin us like this. I looked down at her outstretched hand, remembering the moment she threw my engagement ring on the floor 3 weeks ago. You told me I was nothing without you, Chloe, I said softly, looking her dead in the eye. Now watch what happens to you without me. I turned my back on them, offering my arm to Victoria once more. Shall we grab a drink, my love? Victoria asked, a victorious gleam in her eyes. Lead the way, I replied. We turned and walked away together as the room exploded into absolute chaos around Lucas and Chloe. The news reports on my phone screen confirmed what I already knew. Apex Tech servers had suffered a catastrophic global crash. Without my private encryption keys to debug the core system, their whole network collapsed overnight. The company's stock value plummeted to zero, leaving Lucas and Chloe buried in massive debt. It's over for them, I said, sliding my phone into my pocket as I stood in the grand hallway of the city's private auction house. Not quite, Victoria replied, adjusting her diamond necklace. Arthur Vance put this historic estate up as collateral for Apex's business loans. Today he loses everything. We walked into the auction room and took our seats in the front row. A few moments later, Arthur Vance entered, flanked by Chloe and Lucas. Arthur looked pale and exhausted, while Lucas looked frantic, his suit rumpled and unkempt. Chloe looked terrified, her eyes scanning the room until they locked onto me. Ethan? Chloe gasped, stopping in her tracks. She rushed toward our row, with Lucas stumbling right behind her. What are you doing here? I'm enjoying the view, Chloe, I said calmly, crossing my legs. Ethan, please, she whispered, her voice cracking with desperation. My father spent his entire life building our family's legacy. If we lose this estate today, we have nowhere to go. You have to drop the injunction against Apex. You should have thought about your father's legacy before you forged my signature, I replied, staring back at her without a single trace of sympathy. It wasn't her idea. It was Lucas. Arthur Vance snapped, stepping up with a trembling finger pointed at Lucas. This parasite convinced my daughter that they didn't need you. He promised us hundreds of millions. Shut up, old man. Lucas yelled back, his face flushing red. I tried to fix the code, all right? I didn't know Ethan locked the server files. You lied to me, Arthur shouted back. You destroyed my family name. Silence in the room, please, the auctioneer declared from the podium, striking his wooden gavel hard against the stand. We are now accepting bids for the historic Vance family estate. Starting bid begins at $10 million. A heavy silence filled the room. $10 million, a middle-aged foreign investor called out, raising his paddle. $12 million, another voice called from the left side of the room. Lucas grabbed Chloe's arm, his eyes wide with wild panic. Bid on it? Use your trust fund. My trust fund was tied to Apex's stock value, you idiot. Chloe cried, shoving his hand away. We don't have a single cent. $12 million going once, the auctioneer announced, looking around the room. $12 million going twice. $20 million. Cash, Victoria's voice cut through the air, crisp and unwavering. The entire room turned toward us. Arthur Vance let out a weak groan and collapsed back into a velvet chair, burying his face in his trembling hands. $20 million, the auctioneer called out, his eyes wide with excitement. Going once, going twice? Sold to Sterling Global. Chloe stared at Victoria, then turned her frantic eyes toward me. Her lips trembled as tears welled up in her eyes. Victoria bought it? Why would Sterling Global want our house? Victoria stood up gracefully, smoothing down her designer coat. Sterling Global didn't buy it, Chloe. My corporate fund financed it, but the property title was registered under a single name. Victoria gestured toward me, smiling subtly. My husband's name. The color drained from Chloe's face entirely. What? I stood up from my chair and walked slowly up the carpeted steps toward the auctioneer's podium. The auctioneer handed me the gold master keycard and the official ownership deed. I turned around to face Chloe, Lucas, and Arthur. Chloe ran up the aisle, throwing herself toward the wooden stage. Ethan. Please, she sobbed out loud, reaching out to clutch the edge of the podium. You can't do this to me. Think about our past. We were together for 5 years. I loved you. You loved my work, Chloe, I said sharply, looking down at her. You loved the money you thought I would make you. The moment Lucas offered you a faster shortcut, you threw me out into the rain. I was stupid. Chloe cried, tears streaming down her makeup-stained face. Lucas manipulated me. He forced me to sign those financial papers. I never wanted to hurt you, Ethan. Please give me another chance. We can start over. Don't pin this on me, you lying snake. Lucas screamed from the back, security guards moving in to surround him. You wanted the penthouse. You wanted the luxury lifestyle. Shut up, Lucas. Chloe screamed back over her shoulder before turning back to me with pleading eyes. Ethan, please. I'll leave him right now. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't kick my family out. I reached into my suit pocket and pulled out a legal document prepared by Victoria's legal team this morning. I walked down the steps and pressed the paper directly into Chloe's shaking hands. What is this? She whispered, staring down at the document. That is a 72-hour notice of eviction, I said, my voice ice cold. You, Lucas, and your father have 3 days to clear all of your personal items out of my estate. Ethan. Please don't do this, she sobbed, holding the paper against her chest as she collapsed onto her knees on the polished floor. Where are we supposed to go? You told me I was nothing without you, Chloe, I said, stepping past her without turning back. You told me that karma doesn't exist in business. But karma always collects its debt. And today I'm collecting mine. I walked down the main aisle of the auction house toward the heavy glass doors. Victoria matched my stride, slipping her arm inside mine as we stepped out into the afternoon sunlight together, leaving the crying remains of the Vance family behind us. The morning breeze felt fresh as I stood on the grand marble balcony, overlooking the manicured gardens of the estate. 3 months had passed since the auction, but standing here as the rightful owner still felt surreal. You're up early, a warm voice called out from behind me. I turned to see Victoria stepping onto the balcony, holding 2 steaming mugs of coffee. She wore a simple white silk robe, her dark hair falling softly over her shoulders, a stark contrast to the sharp, severe CO who had met me in a greasy diner. Just thinking about how fast everything changed, I said, taking one of the mugs from her hand. My fingers brushed against hers and a genuine spark passed between us. Change was long overdue for you, Ethan, Victoria said softly, leaning against the balcony railing beside me. By the way, my legal team sent over an update on Lucas this morning. I took a slow sip of my coffee. What's the status? The federal court denied his bail, she replied with a satisfied smile. Between the wire fraud, the forged board signatures, and the intellectual property theft, he's looking at least 8 years in federal prison. He brought it all on himself, I muttered, feeling no pity, only a quiet sense of closure. And Chloe? Her father cut her off completely after the estate was seized, Victoria said, looking at me carefully. She tried to secure a loan last week, but her credit score is ruined. I heard she's working 2 retail jobs at the downtown mall just to cover her tiny apartment rent. Karma finally caught up, I said, looking out over the horizon. A few months ago, I thought my life was completely over when she threw my ring on the floor. Now, I barely recognize the person I used to be. You were always brilliant, Ethan, Victoria said softly, reaching out to cover my hand on the railing with her own. You were just giving your brilliance away to people who didn't deserve it. I guess I needed to lose everything to realize what I was actually worth, I admitted, turning to look into her sharp gray eyes. The glass balcony doors slid open again, and Samantha walked out onto the terrace, holding a sleek black tablet. She wore a tailored suit and smiled brightly as she approached us. Good morning, executive directors, Samantha said, her eyes shining with pride. Sorry to interrupt the view, but the opening quarter reports just came in from our new headquarters. How are the numbers looking, Sam? I asked, smiling at my former assistant, who was now the head of global operations at our new joint firm, Sterling Carter Tech. Better than we projected, Samantha said excitedly, tapping her tablet screen. Over 90% of Apex Tech's former enterprise clients have officially transferred their contracts to our platform. They realized Lucas couldn't run the system without your architecture. That means our stock value just doubled overnight, Victoria noted, glancing at me with a proud grin. Not bad for a company that didn't exist 3 months ago. It's all thanks to Ethan's new quantum encryption framework, Samantha insisted. The board is requesting an emergency press conference at 2 o'clock to announce our European expansion. Tell them we'll be there, I said. And Sam? Excellent work. You've handled the operational transition perfectly. Thank you, Ethan, Samantha smiled warmly. I'll let you two get back to your morning coffee. See you at the office. She turned and headed back inside, leaving Victoria and me alone once more under the clear blue sky. So, Victoria said, stepping closer to me, her eyes locked onto mine. Sterling Carter Tech is officially the dominant force on the West Coast. Our business goals are met. Is that all this is to you now, Victoria? I asked softly, taking her mug from her hand and setting both our cups down on the small patio table behind us. Just business goals? She looked down for a brief moment, a slight blush touching her cheeks before she met my gaze with complete honesty. You know it isn't, she whispered. When we signed those marriage papers, I thought I was buying an algorithm and a strategic corporate partner. I didn't expect to fall in love with the man behind the code. Neither did I admitted, reaching out to wrap my arms around her waist, pulling her close. This started as a contract of convenience to tear down our enemies. But marrying you was the best decision I ever made. You built a new empire from the ashes, Ethan, Victoria smiled, resting her hands lightly against my chest. And you did it on your own terms. No, I corrected gently, leaning down until our foreheads rested against each other. We built it together. As I kissed her under the soft warmth of the morning sun, I felt no lingering pain, no bitterness, and no regret. The past was burned to ash, but standing here today, holding the woman who truly respected me, I knew my real life had finally just begun.